let's move on to the third vertical, which is very important for securing livelihood for rural community. That is imparting education and enhancing skill amongst the youth and other uh, uh, vulnerable section of the society, like women, the person who are not uh, uh, who cannot work due to their physical or mental impairment. So, if we scan through the policy and governance, it's remain more or less same. The structure remains more or less same, but through different schemes and how they are implemented, it made the difference between 2015 and 2025. India's education and skill development ecosystem transformed towards inclusive, outcome driven, and digitally enabled governance. Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan and RMCA ensured universal access to elementary and secondary education, strengthened school infrastructure, and integrated STEM and digital learning. On the skill side, DDU, GKY, and RCETIs trained rural youth, linking them to wage and self employment opportunities, while fostering women led micro enterprises through SHG Convergence under DAY NRLM. Digital governance, including MIS, geotagging, and e certification, enhanced transparency and accountability. By aligning Ministry of Economy, MSME, Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Women and Child Care, India created a holistic, convergent framework that improves human capital, employability, and equitable rural development. So, to support this, let's listen to some experts' opinion. Ajay Bangda of World Bank, how the external funding agencies are conceptualizing or perceiving this transformation.
Agriculture has always been central to development. But today, the real issue is the challenge is how do you make it a driver of jobs? How do you make it a driver of income? And how do you get to food security at scale? How to grow more food, but then turn that growth into a business that produces higher incomes for smallholder farmers and more opportunity across entire. Agriculture has always been central to development. But today, the real issue is the challenge is how do you make it a driver of jobs? How do you make it a driver of income? And how do you get to food security at scale? How to grow more food, but then turn that growth into a business that produces higher incomes for smallholder farmers and more opportunity across entire economies.
So it's an eye opening statement. So moving on to our next subsection, that how where the states stand in this particular focus. Gujarat, over 12 lakh students benefited from SSA intervention, with 3.2 lakh girls receiving targeted scholarships, 4.8 lakh youth trained under DDU JKY. For Uttar Pradesh, 48,000 secondary school upgraded under RMSA, 2.1 lakh youth placed through DDU GKY, and 25 lakh children enrolled in digital learning initiatives. Madhya Pradesh, 2.5 lakh youth trained via uh, training institute, state training institute. Over 90% of schools digitally monitored. STEM lab, that is Science, Technology, Engineering and Management labs, established in uh, 8,500 schools. Bihar, Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan reached 1.8 crore children, 1.2 lakh youth skilled via DDU JKY, and 68% secondary school were upgraded. Jharkhand and Orissa focus on tribal education and skill training. 45,000 youth trained, 60,000 children enrolled in residential schools, and 80% of schools were geotagged. Kerala, near universal digital learning integration, 95% youth placement post screening. SHG linked enterprises scale to 50,000. Assam and West Bengal, emphasis on vocational skill, 1.1 lakh youth trained, 70% schools equipped with digital classroom. All this data highlights convergence between education, skilling, rural livelihood, tailored to each state's demographic and institutional strength. So the key schemes were between this time India's education and skill ecosystem expanded significantly. Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan reached over 25 crore children across 16 lakh schools, integrating digital learning and inclusive access, especially during uh, COVID period, where physical teaching and learning were almost impossible, which gave the platform for opening this digital learning and inclusivity, especially for girls and disadvantaged communities. RMCA upgraded 1.2 lakh secondary schools, improving STEM and vocational curricula, obviously putting up labs that are at par or state of the art kind of a lab for the schools. For rural youth, DDU JKY trained 15.8 lakh candidates and placed 8.4 lakh in wage or self-employment, while the state technical institutes trained 14 lakhs, fostering 1.5 lakh micro enterprises through SHG Convergence under DAY NRLM, digital governance via geotagging, MIS dashboards and e-certification strengthen monitoring and accountability, creating a holistic framework linking education, skills and livelihood for sustainable rural development. So now we are going through the learning the challenges which occurred during the process of transformation. Skill job mismatch, despite 15.8 lakh youth trained under DDU JKY, only 53% secured placement. Recommendation can be aligning curricula with local clusters, digital services and renewable energy, introducing Rural Startup Challenges Grant for SHG youth entrepreneurs. Next challenge is infrastructure gap. Over 20% of secondary schools lacked STEM labs till 2024. Upgrading 12,000 schools with digital labs and e-learning platforms leveraging Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan and RMCA funds. Next challenge, gender and social inclusion. Girls' enrollment in rural secondary school average is 18%, lower in some states. Recommendation is to incentivize scholarship, mentoring, and SHG linked vocational programs. Data and governance always posing somewhat weak linkage. Only 70% of the schools geotagged till 2024. So expanding MIS, geotagging and real-time monitoring to all schools and the training institutes, state training institute, vocational training institutes, integrating with panchayat plans for local accountability can bridge the gaps for data and governance. So finally to conclude this, India's education and skill ecosystem transformed through Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, RMCA, DDU, JKY and RCETIs, reaching over 15.8 lakh rural youth trained, 8.4 lakh placed and 88 lakh women SHG members engaged in skill-linked micro-enterprises. Digital governance, MIS monitoring and geotagging improved accountability, while convergence across Ministry of Education, Ministry of Small Development Enterprises, Ministry of Rural Development and Ministry of Women and Children Development strengthen inclusivity and employability. Looking ahead, expanding STEM access, local cluster skill training, and gender-focused vocational programs will consolidate rural human capital and support the equitable enterprise-driven development. Now moving on to the most important part or the tool for all this transformation, that is infrastructure and connectivity. How infrastructure and connectivity with its development has driven the whole transformation to this state and further. So infrastructure cannot be completed without roads. So rural roads through PMGSY connected 1.95 lakh villages by 2025, ensuring access to markets, schools and healthcare. Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana 3 focused on consolidating 1.25 lakh kilometer of farm to market roads. Electrification and energy access. Initiatives like Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Gram Jyoti Yojana and renewable energy projects expanded rural electricity coverage to nearly 100% of habitations. Digital connectivity through BharatNet. Broadband access extended to all Gram Panchayats, enabling e-governance, digital learning, telemedicine and financial inclusion. Water and sanitation infrastructure. Jal Jeevan Mission, Amrit Sarovar Mission improved safe drinking water and rejuvenated 75,000 plus water bodies. linking infrastructure with livelihoods and climate resilience. Convergence and governance. Ministries of Rural Development, Panchayati Raj, Power and Communication coordinated to integrate roads, electricity, digital networks, and water infrastructure, ensuring holistic, climate resilient rural development. So, scanning the state-wise status. Gujarat, 98% habitation connected through PMGSY, 100% electrified, 65 rural industrial clusters contributing 7,500 crore rupees annually. Uttar Pradesh, 98% habitations linked by 1.5 lakh kilometer roads, 95% households electrified, more almost 90% panchayats are on BharatNet digital connect. Madhya Pradesh, 1.2 lakh kilometer rural roads, 95% villages electrified, 82 panchayats are connected through broadband. Bihar, 85% households with tap water, 1.1 lakh kilometer of roads, 93% electrified, cold storage, status of cold storage were below 50% of the target benchmark. Jharkhand, 80,000 kilometer of roads, 90% of electrification, 75% panchayats digitally connected. Odisha, 1.2 lakh kilometer of roads, 100% electrified, 65% area under solar irrigation, 75,000 water bodies were rejuvenated. For Assam, 88% habitation connected, 88% electrified, 70% panchayats on broadband, focus on flood resilient infrastructure. Kerala, 98% broadband coverage, 100% electrified, 35,000 kilometer climate resilient roads. West Bengal, 95% villages connected, 97% were electrified, 85% panchayats were on BharatNet Digital Connect. Coastal flood, cyclone resilience were improved. So key schemes for this particular verticals. Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, rural habitation connected through this Yojana. Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana, electrification has been done for different rural households. BharatNet digital connectivity enables e-governance, telemedication, teleeducation, etc. Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sichai Yojana and solar irrigation. Solar pumps were installed, it enhanced the climate resilient agriculture and water security. Jal Jeevan Mission, household tap water connections, focus on safe drinking water and rural water and sanitation. Cold chain and rural storage. Cold storage units were constructed, warehousing coverage 85% of the aspirational district, supports farm to market linkages for perishable products. These schemes converge under a data driven governance framework, enabling real time monitoring, geotagging, and outcome based planning to improve rural infrastructure, energy access, water security, and connectivity.